Welcome to Mission West Virginia, brought to you by the West Virginia Library Television Network and Mission West Virginia. I'm your host, Rachel Kinder, Director of the Frameworks Program at Mission West Virginia. Today's show guest is Tracy Komorowski, and she is with Communities in Schools. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Would you mind to introduce yourself a bit to our audience and tell them your title and a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. My name is Tracy Komorowski, as you said. I work at the West Virginia Department of Education. I'm a coordinator there in the Office of Student Support and Wellbeing, but my primary focus is on the expansion and implementation of communities in schools across West Virginia.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about your background. How did you end up in that role?
Sure. Well, I came I started as a teacher. So once upon a time, I was a Marshall University student and I taught school at a variety of programmatic levels in Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. And then from there sort of segued after I completed a master's degree into some state work on a literacy initiative. And that kind of led me to partnering with the State Department of Education, which led me ultimately to this role, which is working on communities in schools.
Okay, and tell us what Communities in Schools is and what the mission is, if you don't mind.
Sure. So in Communities in Schools, our mission is to surround students with a community of support, empowering them to stay in school and achieve in life. That's our big goal, but we do it by placing a site coordinator inside a school building that works alongside families and students in order to remove the barriers that get in the way of success, whatever those may be.
And what age groups or what grade levels?
Yeah, so we have site coordinators in elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools.
Okay.
So we actually like to place site coordinators in what we call a feeder pattern, which means that a student would have access to a Communities in Schools site coordinator in their elementary experience, later their middle school experience, and finally in their high school experience.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And how did this program get started in our state?
That is a wonderful question. So in 2004, Greenbrier County on their own decided that this program would benefit their local community, and they became what is called an affiliate of Communities in Schools, the national organization.
Okay.
So then, fast forward a few years, when Governor Jim Justice and First Lady Kathy Justice came to Charleston, they knew of the success of Communities in Schools in their home county, and they wondered, what if we did something like this for all the counties in West Virginia? So the First Lady reached out to the State Department of Education and to Communities in Schools National and suggested a partnership. And so that first year, 2018-19, Communities in Schools was piloted in 3 unique West Virginia counties, Berkeley, McDowell, and Wyoming.
Okay.
And based on the success of those programs, we began the expansion of Communities in Schools across the state. We have just onboarded our 55th county just in January.
Congratulations!
So, thanks.
I bet that felt really good.
Yes, it did. It was a big goal for us, and 5 years in the making. But also to get to 55 in 5 years was a little fast and furious.
So the 3 counties that you kind of started in, those are pretty far apart geographically and fairly different, I'm guessing. So was that a good test of the success of the potential success of the program?
So that was the idea, right? Can this work in counties that are different geographically, that have unique needs from one another, that have urban pockets as well as very rural pockets,
Definitely.
that have different access to community resources. So we wanted to know that this was something that would work in West Virginia with the challenges that our state has.
Okay. Can you tell us about the footprint of Communities in Schools here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned that we are in all 55 counties, but That doesn't mean we're in every school in every county. So we're in 272 schools across the state.
Okay.
And some of those counties we are countywide, and others we're just getting started. So we might be in anywhere from 1 to 3 schools in some of
Okay.
those newer counties. We are impacting over 114,000 West Virginia students.
That's a lot.
It is. We think, and keep in mind, enrollment fluctuates frequently, but that
Right.
puts us at about 44% of all West Virginia school children have access to a site coordinator in their building.
Okay, that's a lot.
It is. We're excited about those numbers.
So for counties where you're not fully in the county, do you start elementary, high school, or just kind of wherever there's a good fit for you?
Yeah, another excellent question. So what we like to do is come in and implement in a feeder pattern. So
Okay.
we like to start with 3 sites, ideally in elementary, middle, or high school. We do have some unique patterns throughout the state. So we have some K-8 schools, for example. We even have one K-12 school. So sometimes in our more rural or isolated communities, it makes sense for them to add more grade levels to one building.
Right.
And so that happens as well.
Okay.
Occasionally we have a county that feels like that's not the right fit for them, and they have a rationale for implementing a little bit differently, and we work with them on that.
Makes sense. So can you tell our audience how the model works? Because I'm sure there will be some people that are not familiar with it, or people that have heard about it, but they don't really know what it is made up of.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said earlier, we place a site coordinator inside the school building to work directly with students and families. But they are implementing a model that's backed by over 40 years of research, so it is evidence and research based. That's really important to us because we know it works, so we want to make sure we're doing it the right way. And so the first thing the site coordinator will do is conduct a needs assessment. What are the needs and the strengths of this community in particular? They do that by surveying all the stakeholders as well as collecting data. So, what do the parents think are the biggest needs for this school? What do the students think? What do the teachers think? What do the community organizations or local businesses think what the biggest needs are, and what the biggest assets are? So after they discover what the needs are, they start thinking about how they will plug in, and they set a goal based on that needs assessment, and they put a support plan in place. And they begin to connect the dots between the students and families in that school, what their needs are, and the resources that are available to them.
So who within the school does your, and I'm sorry, what do you call the
Site
staff?
coordinator?
The site coordinator. Who do they work with within the school?
So the magic of this program is relationships. And so we feel like our site coordinators are the person that advocates for everyone. Everyone counts themselves in with their site coordinator. And so they work closely with teachers, they work closely with principals, relieving them of some of the duties that might fall on their plate if there weren't a site coordinator in the building, like meeting basic needs of students and families. But they most directly work with students and implementing supports directly to students.
And let's see, so what are some of the most common needs that get addressed by the site coordinator?
So what we see across the state, our top 3 are experienced or exposure to trauma, low socioeconomic status, which so poverty, and emotional or mental health concerns.
Okay.
Those are our big 3 among case-managed students. So although our site coordinators work with everyone in the building and all students benefit from having a site coordinator, there are certain students that they work more closely with. We call those case-managed students. And those students receive Tier 2 small group supports or individualized Tier 3 supports. Our site coordinators do collect data as they work with those students. They check on goal achievement, and they progress monitor. How are the students doing? Are they making progress towards their goal? Are these supports meeting their needs? And if not, what could be changed or tweaked in order to better meet the needs of students? So when we survey case managed students, we see that those are common attributes. Some of the other things that come up frequently but are not in the top 3 are health or medical concerns, food insecurity, family member substance use, aggressive or violent behavior, and then high family mobility or unhoused children and families.
And what are some ways that you try to address these things that come up that aren't necessarily academic related, but I imagine would greatly affect academics?
Yeah. So first order of business is meeting basic needs for our site coordinators. So food, shelter, hygiene, clothing, health, medical care, counseling services, if those are our needs. And those are offered, like I said, to everyone. Tier 1, which would be every student in the building, has access to something related to their basic needs. And additionally to that, our site coordinators look at some other need areas and goal set in those areas. So sometimes it's an academic need. So maybe they would connect a student with a tutor who's struggling in a specific subject. But additionally, they work on reducing extreme behaviors and reducing suspension rates and referral rates. So they might have a group of students they're working with on anger coping strategies so that they're suspended less, removed from class less. Many of our site coordinators work on reducing chronic absenteeism, which is another big issue in the state of West Virginia. So they work on how do we get more students showing up to school every day and engaging in the process. Many of them work on parent and family engagement. And what we have found is that regardless of their goal area, when we improve attendance, academics goes up. When we improve letter grades, the behaviors go down. All of these things are really interwoven in a school ecosystem. And so when we're working on one thing, the other things get the benefit of that as well.
That makes sense. So how do you engage parents if that's one of your goals for a certain area?
Yeah, so it goes back to that needs assessment. So our site coordinators would spend some time surveying parents. They have access to some resources that the national organization has partnered with some national partners to put together, and so they actually have access to engagement surveys that they can send out to families and students. What is so neat about those surveys is it really drills down into where are parents engaged and where are they not engaged. So you might find that parents are very engaged when it comes to student athletics, but less engaged when it comes to the science fair or reading and math night. And that gives our site coordinators a place to start, knowing where their parents are engaged and where they're not. And there are also surveys like that for students that help them know, wow, this student is so engaged socially in the school, but less engaged academically, or so engaged academically, but not really connected to their peers socially. And so within those engagement domains, we call them, they can connect that student to resources that specifically address the domains where they are less engaged.
Okay, well that makes sense. So I think you brought some outcome data with you that we actually have a visual of. Can you talk about that some?
I will. So I mentioned those goal areas before, and we call them the ABCs, and that's because it's attendance, behavior, and the C is coursework, and those are our typical goal areas when it comes to communities and schools. And so we collect data around those goal areas. And in our most recent collection, we can tell you that 68% of case-managed students, so students that are receiving Tier 2 and 3 supports and considered most at risk, have improved their attendance. 76% of those students across the state have improved behavior. 82% have improved academics. 94% were promoted to the next grade level. That's of kindergarten through 11th graders. Our 12th graders get promoted, but we don't collect that data. We collect graduation data for our 12th graders, and we can tell you that 89% of them graduated or received their GED.
Wow.
Yeah, we're excited about that too because that is collected among seniors that are in their 4th year of high school, and many of them will go on to receive a diploma or a GED in their 5th year cohort. So even that 11% that didn't graduate will have an opportunity through credit recovery or option pathways to graduate. So so we are very excited about that number. And then also 99% of case managed students that are eligible to withdraw from school chose to stay in school. And that's a really powerful number because keep in mind, many of these students are referred to their site coordinator because someone, a teacher, a parent, a caregiver, a principal, a friend, is worried they won't graduate. And so for 99% of them to stay in school, I think it's strong evidence that relationships matter deeply, and the relationship they have with their site coordinator is keeping them enrolled and keeping them coming to school every day.
A lot of what we do at Mission just goes back to that one caring adult model that is so powerful. I don't think everyone realizes how the power that one caring person has in the life of a child. And I imagine the schools are pretty happy to have your coordinators too, because you're improving all of the numbers that they need to see improved, right?
Yes. So we get a lot of very positive feedback from our schools. Many counties are choosing to expand on their own. So those counties that I mentioned are county-wide. We started in probably 1 or 2 feeder patterns, and they've come to us and said, we need this everywhere. All our kids deserve a caring adult.
Right.
And they do. And so we've been able to support that expansion as well, and we'll continue to do that. Even now that we're in all 55 counties, we will work towards getting a site coordinator in every school in West Virginia so that every student has a caring adult and an advocate.
So let me ask you about my key population at Mission West Virginia, at least. So I direct the program that is foster care and kinship related. So I'm assuming you find that these are a lot of the kids that you're serving are children either in foster care or children living with relatives?
We do see quite a bit of that, and so many of our site coordinators work closely with kinship, with grand families programs, and some of those other programs that are in place to support families that are navigating maybe parenthood in a new way. And that we have found that to be successful, and also just that those families are really grateful for the support as well.
I would bet. We have a lot of grandparents and even great-grandparents raising kids, and I know I have 2 in elementary school. It's a lot just to keep up with my 2, and I'm not, a grandparent, and I'm not, I'm as familiar as I can be with the school system, but I definitely see a lot of kids where their families are struggling with that. Does it affect your program that so many children in foster care are so mobile, like that they may move from school to school?
That's a great question too. One of the benefits of having more communities and schools site coordinators rather than less is that when a student transfers to a new school, if there's a new site coordinator at that school, we can give them access after consent is received to the student's data at a previous location. So a new site coordinator would be able to pick up with that support plan without missing any days in between. So a student that's relying on a set of services would get that same set of services at the new location. Whether those are basic needs, academic, behavior. That is a real benefit to the program. Now, when we don't have that in place, so let's say they transfer to a school that doesn't have a site coordinator, many of our site coordinators work really hard to support those students and families the best that they can as they transition by making contact with the school when appropriate.
Okay, so even if they're not in the school, they can still kind of stay in touch.
And sometimes also we find that those students come back to us.
Right.
So they leave and come back, and so that's important too, that they, again, even for a site coordinator that was working with a student maybe last year and the student comes back, they would have access to the database as well and be able to access previous data and look at, what their situation was, what seemed to work for them, what maybe didn't work so well.
That makes sense. At my agency, we have data and reporting and the general things that we do on the daily basis, and then we periodically try to focus on storytelling so that we can communicate the value of our programs. Do you have any favorite stories from your program?
Oh, we have so many.
I'm sure you do.
Yes. Well, I can share a story. We have worked alongside the Friends with Paws program, which places therapy dogs in communities and schools in order to work with students. And I had a site coordinator, share that she had a student who had missed well over 200 school days, which is, very significant. And that she shared with her that, when they got their therapy dog, the dog was really going to look forward to seeing her every day and engaging with her. And that young child decided that it was just really important that she be in school every single day because somebody was counting on her, and that somebody was a dog. And the next school year, I think she had to miss one day. She was being raised by a relative, and the relative called to say, she has a fever, she is so sick, we cannot send her to school, but she's just a mess that, about missing this one day. And so I think that goes a long way just to, that site coordinator knew that, that this child needed to feel like somebody was counting on them to be there and put that into place. Additionally, we have so many stories about students that, without a site coordinator just wouldn't have made it to graduation day. Maybe they were living in a car, maybe they were couch surfing, maybe they were a breadwinner for their family and needed so many hours a week to be able to work. And so traditional school wasn't going to get them on stage graduation day. And our site coordinators were able to pull in the right supports to get them a diploma, but also recognize that their needs were unique and it wasn't one or the other. You can work that job, and we can help you to get into secure housing and keep you safe and help you work on getting to graduation.
And do your coordinators hear back from students after they graduate?
Many do. Many are still in touch. We are actually working on creating a Communities in Schools alumni group among our graduates.
That's smart.
So now that we've been at it a few years, it's exciting to just know that we have alumni out there doing great things. Many are enrolled in colleges or universities or trade schools. Some have enlisted, some are in the workforce. And we would like to bring them together and allow them to speak directly to our site coordinators at trainings and events that we have.
That's a great idea.
But also let them mentor students that are where they used to be, that are, in high schools, working with a site coordinator, maybe needing to see that somebody else who had a lot of struggles still managed to graduate and achieve in life.
I would think that would be pretty powerful coming from alumni. So do you have any upcoming goals or events or anything that you'd like to share with our audience for early 2024?
We do have several upcoming events for our site coordinators. So we'll be conducting regional trainings for them in April, sort of helping them prepare for the end of school year, how to meet the needs of their families over the summer, because often needs don't change just because we're on summer break.
Right.
But some of those resources may go away. So our site coordinators work to connect families with resources that are available over the summer. We always have a big statewide conference for all of our site coordinators and our district leaders. And so we'll be bringing them together over the summer as well so that they can network and learn from one another. Working on bringing some alumni in for a panel discussion also at that event, like we just mentioned. So we do have some big things on the horizon. Additionally, we are just always in a cycle of what can we do better next time. We are very focused on continuous improvement. And although we feel great about those data points, we know that we are very much in our infancy in terms of implementation of communities in schools. Many of our schools are in their first year or their second year of implementation. The research from the national organization says that it typically takes about 3 years to see community change.
Okay.
So although we're already starting to see it and we're wildly excited about that, we know that the best is yet to come. And so we are also looking forward to those numbers as we continue to expand.
I bet. And remind me, what year did you start in Greenbrier County?
So we were not a part of the Greenbrier County start. They did that on their own. I want them
that's
to
right,
get
that's
full
right.
credit for that. And that was in 2004.
Okay.
Our pilot year was in 2018-19.
Gotcha. So pretty new,
It really
but
is in
that's a lot of progress to have made since that time.
And those early years, we were just expanding a couple of counties at a time, as we were building out what this model would look like in West Virginia and how we could make it unique to fit our unique needs. So a lot of our biggest expansion to date really happened this fall in August of 2023. So for those programs, they're very new and
Right.
they're doing great things, but they're still learning.
So we're wrapping up the show, and I didn't have a lot of time to ask you what you do in your day-to-day, but what is your favorite part of your job?
Oh, my favorite part of my job is supporting people. So it is, it's helping the helpers. So anything that I can do, the trainings that we put together, the resources that we pull together and are able to share out statewide, the encouragement that we provide, all of that, I know we're sending right to the front lines, right to our site coordinators that are really the magic of this program. They work so hard every day for very, very seldom thank yous probably, but they work so hard for our students and families. They sacrifice quite a bit to do that work. And so the best thing about my job is that I get to help them and support them in their very important jobs.
Is there anything else you would want our audience to know before we part ways?
Just that Communities in Schools of West Virginia is doing wonderful things for our kids and our families. So if you get the opportunity to connect with them or support them or rally for them, we would appreciate it.
And I think throughout the show we have shared the website and contact information, so you can definitely look to find more info. But it was really interesting to learn about your program. It's something that in the social work world and in people who work with education, we hear about your program all the time. It definitely, the word of mouth is definitely there. We're definitely in a lot of schools that has your program, but I did not realize until today what the model looks like, what the expansion looks like, and it's really encouraging to hear about.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been another episode of Mission West Virginia, and we hope to see you next month.